You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology. I am your host, Jeff Hinshaw. Thanks for tuning in. Cosmic Cousins is dedicated to honoring the interconnectedness of our universal family through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. And it is here to bring you back into alignment with the cosmos. So thank you for being here as always. Hey, Cosmic Cousins, welcome back to another week of the podcast. This is our special Gemini New Moon podcast episode, closing us out here for Gemini season of 2023. It's right here at the end of Gemini season. So to all of our Geminis out there, I hope you had a lovely solar return season. To the Gemini moons and Gemini risings, this is also a important lunation for you this year. We get one Gemini new moon every year, and so this is the one. On this week's episode, we're going to connect in with the invitation of the Gemini new moon. We'll also connect in with the title of this episode, which I've titled Building Structures with Mutable Magic. Building Structures with Mutable Magic. So we're going to connect in with the Grand Cross, the Mutable Grand Cross this episode. We have Juno and Gemini, square Neptune and Pisces, in opposition to Ceres and Virgo, and then the galactic center opposite this Gemini new moon and Juno and Gemini. So I'll get into all of that with you today. We also have two special guests, which feels quite Gemini. We have two little Gemini twins here with us today. But what I find interesting is that neither of them are Geminis. They're actually both Sagittarius Sun, Gemini's polar sign. We have Lars Mellis here with us today, aka Lars Stars, who's going to talk to us about Gemini's ability to embody duality. And we're also going to talk about the square to Neptune and Pisces, how to navigate that energy. And then we have an hour conversation with Holly Ramey, who is a Aries sun with a Sagittarius moon and a Libra rising. And in our conversation, we range from discussing grief all the way to imagination and play with Barbie. So it's very Gemini, that polarity there. And some of the topics that we cover are understanding polarity in the chart, the balance of light and dark, Uranus oppositions, Neptune squares, Juno and its connection to floristry and fashion, Gemini and Venus as the esoteric ruler, Gemini and the Lover's card in the tarot, and Saturn squares and oppositions. So if any of those topics are of interest to you, you want to stick around for that conversation. But before we get into all of this Gemini goodness, I do have a few announcements. Chiron and the Asteroid Summer Series. This starts this Monday. So if you're listening to this live, I'm recording this on Saturday, June 17th, which is the day of the Gemini New Moon. And if you listen to this in time and you feel called, there is a new 5-week summer series that meets on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Zoom. And there is one more spot left for this summer series. So if you hear this in time, or if the date's passed and you want to join in for the final 4 gatherings, then please reach out to me. It is going to be a transformative journey into the world of the planetoids and asteroids. And so this series is designed for anyone interested in diving deeper into astrology, tarot, and spiritual practices. And each week will connect to an asteroid or a planetoid of the week, including Chiron, Eris, Black Moon Lilith, Juno, Ceres, Pallas, and Vesta. We'll cover all of those. And so we gather for 5 weeks from this Gemini new moon all the way until the Cancer new moon in July. So if you'd like to learn more, you could check out the links in the show notes. I also have another announcement that I would just like to put out there because there's a bonus podcast episode this week. I had a lovely time with Vanessa, who is the host of the Aquarian podcast. and I gathered with her for episode 33. So in Gemini twin fashion, this week there are 2 podcast episodes for your listening pleasure. This usual Cosmic Cousins episode, and then this bonus episode. And so the episode on the Aquarian podcast is titled Blending Tarot and Astrology with Jeff Hinshaw. And in our conversation, we talk about my origins with tarot. We talk about life path cards in the tarot, esoteric ruling planets, and the importance of the part of fortune in the birth chart, which the part of fortune and the part of spirit both feel like really cool places in our chart to meditate on for the Gemini New Moon, because Gemini is all about the integration of polarity, which is what these points do. And that's one of our phrases this week for the Gemini New Moon is I integrate. So if you're new here, welcome. If you're joining back, welcome back. I'm so grateful to be here with you. As you know, every time we gather, I'll always offer you 3 phrases. And these phrases are here to activate and awaken a deeper connection to the particular lunation that we are meditating under. And so the phrases I have for the Gemini New Moon are I communicate, I integrate, I collaborate. I communicate, I integrate, I collaborate. You could say these to yourself, so you could repeat them as a mantra. You could breathe them into your body. You could pull a tarot card for each of these 3, which is something fun that I like to connect with you all on. If you ever pull a card for each of the phrases, you can always post it on Instagram and tag me if you're there. You can always email it to me too. I love seeing what energies we're all moving through and connecting with. So I communicate, I integrate, I collaborate. This one has kind of a cadence and a rhythm to it, which feels quite Gemini. You know, I think of Gemini and Virgo both having a cadence and a rhythm because of their mercurial influence. And so, yes, the rhyming scheme somehow is connecting us to Gemini. I communicate, I integrate, I collaborate. Before we go deeper into this Gemini New Moon, I would just like to also share a few other things. I have a few other announcements. One of them in honor of Gemini and being connected to writing and inner child healing and early education. These are all Gemini themes. I wanted to offer a special shout out congratulations to astrologer Rachel Lang of Ojai, California, for their recent release of her children's book, As Above, So Below. So this book is a heartwarming and inspiring book that invites young readers to explore their relationship with the cosmos. This book introduces the planets and luminaries through enchanting illustrations and accessible storytelling. And now feels like a really important time to be connecting in with children's books that we relate to and that we want to share with the next generations. So I put a link to that book in the show notes and also in the newsletter. So if you're ever wanting to look along, if you're a visual person, everything that I'm sharing with you, including the announcements, all have pretty little images and write-ups and links in the newsletter. And so you can sign up for the newsletter. I only send newsletters out on the new and the full moon in tandem with the podcast episodes. In addition, I did a little Gemini New Moon ritual yesterday. I was actually going to record the podcast yesterday on Friday, but I was just kind of overtaken by the mutable quality of Gemini, and I was like, I need to play a little bit. I don't want to sit and record right now. And it was really sunny where I am yesterday and very just kind of active. People were out and about. There were a lot of, yard work happenings and, people honking their horns. And today it's a bit cloudier and it feels perfect for a new moon recording. But yesterday, as part of my Gemini New Moon ritual, I hid little trinkets and notes and trees around my neighborhood. So if you'd like to watch the video and read the very Gemini words that I wrote to go in tandem with this experience, you can check out the video on Instagram. I'll put a link there. So Gemini is connected to small trinkets and it's connected to your neighborhood. And actually, I think I'll go ahead and I'll read the words that I wrote to go in tandem. It's like a little Gemini poem. And I do associate Gemini with lyrics, writing, words, poetry, all of these things. I mean, we can think of Queen of Gemini, Cosmic Cousins, Queen of Gemini, Stevie Nicks, who's very lyrical. So this is what I wrote. This is a little Gemini New Moon poem, and then this will transition us into going deeper into the new moon. Gemini season closeout, here with a Gemini new moon, releasing the past through light and dark, letting go of old beliefs, letting go of small trinkets, connection to your neighborhood, inner child healing and play, nostalgic songs from childhood. You are a genius. So is Gemini rising Regina Spektor. Witnessing butterflies and bees, hummingbirds and wind chimes, gifts from nibblings and soul twins, synchronistic musings and messages, taking breaks from work to walk with both lovers and friends, clown shoes and circus dogs, jackhammers and neurotic neighbors, talks of both weddings and divorce, happy, 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 gay, 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 deep grief and a sigh of relief. What a fucked up world. What a wonderful world. Sunshine and thunderstorms, non-binary jokes and rainbows. I wonder, so I wander. Gemini New Moon blessings. Big love. Taking a deep breath into the body, we can connect to Gemini's body parts. Gemini is connected to the arms, the hands, the shoulders. So maybe we stretch the arms out, bring the hands towards the shoulders. Take a deep, nourishing inhale into the lungs. This is also Gemini's part of the body. And as you exhale, relaxing through these parts of the body, relaxing the arms, the hands, the shoulders down by your side. Gemini is also connected to the nervous system and really any part of the body that might come in pairs. You know, I think of the eyes with Gemini. I think of the ears with Gemini, the hands. The feet we'll give to Pisces, the two fish. Feet is the body part for Pisces, but Gemini and Pisces have things in common, which we're going to explore today, because Pisces feels important to this new moon. For one, this new moon falls on a Saturday, which is Saturn's day, and today, Saturday, June 17th, Saturn stations retrograde in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces is a 3-year transit that is encouraging us to commit, to slow down, to have a sense of responsibility around Piscean themes in our life. So Saturn made it to 7 degrees of Pisces this year, and will station retrograde and travel back to 0 degrees of Pisces. So this is the first leg of our journey with Saturn and Pisces, encouraging us to build structures around our spiritual practices. I connect Saturn and Pisces to sobriety. You know, Pisces is connected to alcohol, but Saturn wants to bring some sort of restriction. Saturn and Pisces ask us to take care of our mental health. And while we're in Gemini season and have this Gemini new moon, which is a very active mental energy, Saturn and Pisces is saying shh to all of the Gemini conversations. So there's this interesting dialogue already created just knowing that Saturn stations retrograde on this new moon that falls on Saturn's day. So let's explore some Gemini themes first, and then we'll build out and we'll connect to Neptune and Pisces. Again, here comes Pisces, because Neptune and Pisces is square to this new moon. And Saturn and Pisces is square to Mercury in Gemini. So, Gemini, what do we know about Gemini? What do we love about Gemini? The lovers in the tarot connects us to Gemini. The words, the phrases we have for this Gemini new moon, again, I communicate, breathing that into the hands and the arms. I integrate, breathing that into the lungs. I collaborate, relaxing the shoulders. So the Gemini New Moon, it offers us a time where, well, from a basic standpoint, we know this, the sun and the moon line up in the sky, and they're found here at 26 degrees of Gemini. So you can look to this part of your chart to see what new seeds of intention you might be planting today. New moons are often times where we can set new intentions. This doesn't always feel like the invitation of the new moon, but it can be, and this particular new moon does feel like a great one for intention setting, particularly if it's taking into consideration your spiritual practices and taking them responsibly, Saturn and Pisces. The Gemini new moon, it brings with it a sense of curiosity, of mental agility, of communication. Gemini encourages adaptability and versatility. This is a mutable sign. Gemini encourages adaptability and versatility and the exchange of ideas. This is a powerful time to connect with others and to explore new ways of thinking. This new moon is also about duality, which if we look at the fifth Spirit Tarot's depiction of the Lovers, which is Gemini's soul growth card, we'll see an individual placing their hands up against their cosmic self. And when we meditate on this in relationship to duality, there's these themes of polarity that come up, of darkness and light, the importance of integration in your life. So this is a time to explore both sides of yourself, all sides of yourself, to embrace your contradictions as we head towards the longest day of the year on the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice. Duality is very present on this day. So finding ways to bring all aspects of yourself into harmony, both within and also in the world around you. So as we move through this new moon, take some time to connect with your inner child. Tap into your sense of playfulness, of movement, of curiosity. If you typically listen to this podcast while in the bath, that's wonderful. And what would it like for you to listen to this podcast while moving and dancing and flowing in your body? Gemini would like to know what it would like to be like to listen to this podcast with a friend or while walking around your neighborhood. So if you're able, gift yourself space to explore new ideas, to explore new experiences without judgment, and to trust that your inner guidance will lead you to where you need to be. Gemini, new moon vibes. So honoring this lunation, definitely a time to write intentions down. Gemini is really a sign that's connected to writing. And I think that can often get glossed over, but why is that? Because the mind is powerful. And when we can write things out, it makes me think of the Sanskrit word for the throat chakra, which is Visuddhu, which means purification. It's a purifying process when we write. Sometimes we write things out of us and we don't need to say them anymore. We can clear it out. Consider setting intentions, writing them down, particularly those intentions that might relate to communication, to collaboration, and integration. I communicate, I integrate, I collaborate. So some questions for reflection for us on this new moon. What new ideas or experiences do you want to explore? What new ideas or experiences do you want to explore? Really sit with this question and maybe even close your eyes and meditate on it. The image of the Two of Swords is coming to mind right now, which is typically an individual blindfolded, sitting in front of a body of water with two swords crossed over their heart, or in this case, the lungs. So the new moon is a time to go within and to meditate. So perhaps instead of rushing to answer this question, Saturn and Pisces is slowing us down to really feel into the vastness of the unknown. What new ideas or experiences do you want to explore? Becoming intentional. How can you better connect with others and share your ideas and insights? Again, Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces is asking us to slow down and really tune into this. Whereas Gemini might act more from a place of curiosity and instinct. But what happens if we allow ourselves some extra space to really marinate in these questions? How can you better connect with others and share your ideas and insights? What aspects of yourself are in need of greater integration? Breathe that in to the body. What aspects of yourself are in need of greater integration? And as you exhale, release what no longer serves you. So some Gemini New Moon affirmations. I communicate my thoughts and feelings with ease and clarity. I communicate my thoughts and feelings with ease and clarity. I release any limiting beliefs and embrace my full potential. I release any limiting beliefs and embrace my full potential. I am grateful for the connections and relationships in my life. I am grateful for the connections and relationships in my life. Breathing all of those affirmations and questions into the body, the physical body, the energetic body, the spiritual body. And at this time, let's transition into going deeper into this Gemini New Moon by looking at the mutable Grand Cross, building structures with mutable magic. So particular to this Gemini New Moon is a powerful mutable Grand Cross. And I have an image of this in the newsletter, and I also posted it on Instagram, which shows 4 corners of a square. The 4 corners of this mutable Grand Cross, of course, is this new moon in Gemini, which is conjunct Juno in Gemini, the asteroid Juno. The new moon is found at 26 degrees of Gemini, and Juno is at 27 degrees of Gemini. We also have Neptune and Pisces at 27 degrees square this new moon. And Ceres, the asteroid, Ceres in Virgo at the anaretic degree and 29 degrees of Virgo. So Ceres in Virgo is opposite Neptune and Pisces. Both square this new moon conjunct Juno in Gemini. And then to complete the 4 corners of this grand mutable cross is the galactic center. The galactic center found at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So let's start with the new moon and Juno. So this new moon is conjunct Juno, the asteroid of partnership. I often refer to Juno as this place in our chart where we can become enlightened through beauty and through relationships. One of the symbols for Juno is the lotus. You can think of the crown chakra, enlightenment. She often holds an orb with a lotus on the end. And so now is a prime time for setting intentions around communication and writing themes. This is the Gemini New Moon, as well as a time to connect in with relationship, Juno, with collaboration, beauty, intimacy, flowers, design. This is Juno. Another one of Juno's symbols is the peacock, symbol of wisdom and prosperity, which was painted on the wall of the cafe I went to this morning, a giant peacock. And it was the first time I actually ever noticed that this entire cafe is filled with different peacocks. I'd never noticed that before, and so rediscovering this or discovering this today, that the day that the sun and the moon line up with Juno, felt really important. And then meanwhile, in the background, a very nostalgic song came on by Gemini Bob Dylan. This played in the background. And, you know, Gemini kind of has this quality where you're in your neighborhood going to a cafe. This cafe is called Case Study, which also feels very Gemini to me, just the name Case Study. And Gemini can communicate through messages, through angels, through guides, through fairies. So when songs come on in cafes, feels very Gemini to me. And it often will be like Queen of Gemini, Stevie Nicks will come on at particular moments. Or in this case, Bob Dylan, who maybe could be a really good king of Gemini. One day we'll do the Zodiac Kings series. I'm not sure when, but Bob Dylan is a Gemini. And this song was about one of his dreams. He recounts one of his dreams. And so I'll read some of the lyrics to you. With hungry hearts through the heat and cold, we never much thought we could get very old. We thought we could sit forever in fun, and our chances really was 1,000,000 to 1. So the theme of this song recounts one of Bob Dylan's dreams of love and childhood, of travel, of aging, nostalgia, memory, regret, loss. So all of this feels very Gemini to me, but particularly in relationship to the square to Neptune and Pisces. So we have this very beautiful relational Juno in Gemini with the new moon, and it's square Neptune and Pisces, which brings in an era of confusion, of existential wonder. So Neptune is fogginess, so there could be feelings of fogginess that arise at this time. Uncertainty may arise. And with the busy mind of Gemini and this Neptunian influence, this could feel like, Neptune is spiraling, whereas Gemini is thought, so it's like foggy, spiraling thoughts of uncertainty. So Neptune may blur boundaries and create illusions or delusions. Neptune is connected to the hanged man or the hanged one in the tarot. So we have the lovers and the hanged one. So the busy mind of Gemini wants to analyze and figure things out while Neptune is blurring boundaries. Gemini seeks clarity and logic through their analytical nature. Neptune is much more about the unknown. So this is maybe not the best time for decision making necessarily. If we're talking about Juno and relationships, square Neptune and Pisces, this could be having like rose-colored glasses on when it comes to a lover or a collaboration. So maybe not the best time for decision-making and relationship. But this is a time of falling in love. I mean, it's a useful time for enhanced compassion, enhanced creativity, connecting to your intuition, spirituality, music, poetry, imagination. And then meanwhile, this new moon is also in opposition to the galactic center. If we didn't think it was otherworldly enough with Neptune, the galactic center brings in this cosmic intergalactic feel. The galactic center may have some profound impact on your communication right now, Gemini, on your writing, on your intellectual curiosity. The galactic center, if you're not familiar with it, is located at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, and it is considered to be a point of cosmic consciousness in our chart. It's usually found around 26 to 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And so when a planet in Gemini is opposite this point, it often brings a heightened sense of awareness and curiosity about the universe and its mysteries. So we have that to consider on this new moon. And then to complete the mutable grand cross, this new moon is also square to Ceres and Virgo. So we have Juno and Gemini opposite the galactic center, the new moon opposite the galactic center, and then Neptune and Pisces opposite Ceres and Virgo. Oh my God, a Ceres and Virgo is like, wow, there's so much going on right now, so much cosmic, otherworldly, intellectual curiosities spiraling off in all directions. And Ceres and Virgo, poor Ceres and Virgo is like, there's things that we need to tend to. Ceres brings a focus towards health, nutrition, and work in Virgo. Ceres is actually at home in Virgo, and she's at the anaretic degree, the final degree of Virgo. So Ceres is the asteroid connected to nurturance and mothering. And I often say Ceres is transforming grief through creative power. You know, Ceres is connected to the loss of innocence, the loss of a child. and honoring the cycles of the year. Ceres is the reason why we have winter every year. So we're connecting to the cycles of nature here through work, through health, through nutrition. So Gemini has this desire for intellectual stimulation, and the otherworldly influences of Neptune and the galactic center may spiral these Gemini thoughts off into the cosmos. But Ceres in Virgo indicates to us that there are practical needs to attend to. So how might we channel all of this stimulation into some sort of offering or devotion? Ceres in Virgo wants to know. So in my own practice, I often refer to this four-cornered grand cross as a grand square. I think the shape of a square is very helpful because there is, even though it might feel like we're getting pulled in four different directions, into work with Ceres and Virgo, into the cosmos with the galactic center, into our thoughts with Gemini, and into the spiritual, mystical imagination world of Neptune, we might be getting pulled in four different directions. And if those four different directions come together, they build a solid foundation on which to build off of. So this mutable grand cross or grand square, it could feel a bit challenging and dispersing, yet it also holds tremendous potential for channeling your practical needs to be of service through your spiritual gifts. This is Virgo and Pisces, all while channeling your understanding of the cosmic consciousness, galactic center, through communication, writing, and collaboration. Gemini. So I'll give an example in my own life, and then I'll also give an example about Lars Stars, who's going to share with us a bit more about Gemini. So in my own life, I'm using this Gemini New Moon as an opportunity to go within and set new intentions around the Cosmic Cousins Astro Oracle that I'm creating. It's an opportunity to continue to channel and focus these four mutable points towards creating Neptune, connecting to the spiritual side of it, to writing Gemini, to connecting to cosmic consciousness. Actually, the Cosmic Cousins Astro Oracle was channeled last year. I created all of the images when the sun was conjunct the galactic center, and when Jupiter in Pisces was conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and the moon was in Pisces. So I'm already connected to these mutable points. And this is the cool thing about astrology, is when you practice it more and more and pay attention to it, then when we have a new moon that is around the same degrees as an energy you were working with in a previous year, it starts to click into place. And so again, I'm utilizing these 4 points, and then the Virgo is me actually bringing it into tangible form and actually sitting down and working. Actually creating this podcast and the newsletter takes a lot of Virgo attention to detail and devotion. So that is how I'm utilizing it. How are you utilizing the 4 corners of the mutable grand cross to better communicate, collaborate, and integrate on this Gemini new moon? I wanted to give another example because Lars Mellis, aka Lars Stars, a friend of mine who is a professional astrologer based in West Hollywood, California, just converted his astrology practice into a full-time endeavor and is now the proud owner of his very own Lars Stars LLC. And this felt so appropriate to this mutable grand cross because Lars has a Sagittarius midheaven at 27 degrees, so has a galactic center midheaven. So the midheaven, the public appearance, the career, Lars Stars, we see it even in the name. And then this new moon in Gemini is down at the bottom of his chart. This deeper part of the self and setting new intentions around communicating one's gifts out into the world. And also even collaborating with other astrologers, like being on my podcast. And then Lars is, of course, if there's a Sagittarius midheaven, then Lars is a Pisces rising with Neptune transiting his rising sign right now. And then Ceres is in Virgo on his descendant. So waking up, rising to his potential to be otherworldly, Neptune, and then also balancing it out in collaborations with other people by being nurturing, Ceres, and being of service to other people, offering a service to other people as an astrologer. So Lars's chart is a really good example since it's on the 4 corners of the chart the ascendant, midheaven, IC, and descendant, as a way to see how this might be manifesting in someone's life. So where do these four corners fall in your chart, and how does your chart communicate to these 4 points? So again, this is an opportunity for us to channel new intentions here on this Gemini New Moon. And so I'm wishing for you a Gemini New Moon that is insightful and curious, and I hope in some ways this has sparked some new ways of working with the energy that's available. At this time, in honor of Lars's expansion, I invited Lars on this week's episode of Cosmic Cousins, and Lars brilliantly explores Gemini's ability to embody duality and offers suggestions for navigating and working with the energy of Gemini and this new moon square to Neptune and Pisces. So at this time, let's transition into this message from Lars Stars now.
Hello, my name is Lars Mellis, and I'm honored to be here providing a small delineation of the new moon in Gemini, which is occurring at 26 degrees of Gemini, happened to be just opposite my midheaven on my IC, so this is an important lunation for me. When I think about the new moon in Gemini, or Gemini in general, what comes to mind is the first ever astrology reading I received way before I became a professional astrologer. And that came from Gal Sasson, who is a Kabbalistic astrologer, I should say. And he had a really unique, beautiful interpretation of Gemini. I pulled his book way out from the top of my bookshelf that I still have. And what he describes in the first line of his overview of the sign is that while Aries represents the pure masculine force and Taurus represents the feminine, Gemini symbolizes their union, as well as the merger of all opposing forces. I think this idea of Gemini, not as the terrible rep that it gets as being two-faced, but actually as embodying duality, is so beautiful and so apt and so accurate. I am quite the Sagittarius. I have a Sagittarius sun, moon, Mercury, Mars, and midheaven, all of which I bring to my work as a professional astrologer, as you can imagine. So Gemini being my polar sign means so much to me. And when I think about Sagittarius, I think about the truth and how Sagittarius is about the truth, and nothing but the truth. And the beautiful thing about Gemini and this idea about it embodying duality the way that it does is that there is more than one truth, right? There's more than one way to look at the truth. The truth is not a black and white thing all the time. There are different views on it. And Gemini allows us to examine something from so many different vantage points, that mutable air that brings the logic, ruled by Mercury, that thinking and communicating, allows us to really do some mental acrobatics in the most, I would say, upstanding, or in the most enlightened way possible, to really evaluate an issue from all sides. And a new moon in Gemini in general is really about embarking on a new emotional cycle in regards to how we approach thinking and communicating. How we talk to ourselves is a great meditation. How do I talk to myself? And how can I speak to myself with more love and more respect? How can I, through examining the ways in which I go about patterns of thought and behavior, really ground down into more courage and into more self-compassion? You know, one other thing, one affirmation that Gal Sasson includes in his book for Gemini is, I am attracting the right relationships into my life. I surround myself with people who understand and love me. I effortlessly receive the information I need to give and share with the rest of creation. And isn't that a beautiful way to embody this Mercury-ruled mutable air sign of Gemini? And especially when it comes to the new moon, which is about embarking or ushering in a new emotional cycle. Now, from a more academic viewpoint, I should say, of this lunation, what I tend to like to do is really delineate the fine details of a chart. In this new moon, probably the most prominent aspect or profound aspect in this chart is a square to Neptune. And that square to Neptune, the new moon being very cerebral and about embarking upon new patterns of thinking and the way in which we go about communication, being square to Neptune or in a tussle with the planet that has everything to do with the dissolution of the ego, that has to do with illusion and disillusion, is very much about the ways in which we get in our own way, or we can be our biggest blocker to trying to usher in or to ushering in what we want to usher in. A lot of the time it is fear or disillusion or the illusion that we can't do it. And at the end of the day, you have everything you need to embark upon whatever journey you want to embark upon. So with this new moon in Gemini, I wish you new insight. I wish you a fresh perspective. I wish you evaluating issues along many perspectives. And I ask you to, if you can't get out of your own head, just like there's the twins, so they can bounce ideas off each other, find someone that you trust to process with and bounce ideas off of them to help you enlighten yourself in this, coming month and year.
Thank you so much, Lars, for contributing to the podcast. And thank you to all of those who are listening. If you'd like to learn more about Lars, you could check out the links in the show notes to support their new endeavors. And at this time, we have another conversation with a friend of mine, Holly Ramey. I'm going to read you Holly's bio. Before I read that to you, though, I would like to remind you that if you would like to support the podcast, you can make a one-time donation by clicking the link in the show notes, or becoming a monthly contributor to the show by becoming a Patreon supporter. You can go to patreon.com/cosmiccousins. Also, again, I have a 5-week summer series coming up on the asteroids, Chiron and the asteroids, which is starting this Monday. And I do have some availabilities for readings this July and August, and I'd be honored to hold space for you in that way. Also, if you want to check out a little sneak peek of the Cosmic Cousins Astro Oracle, I did tune into the collective this week and pulled 3 cards and posted a video on my Instagram, so you can check out that video. A link in the show notes for that too. And just a little update there. The Astro Oracle deck is a beautiful, very cosmic, neon, futuristic, non-binary astrology oracle deck, and it's set to be open for pre-order this August 2023 with a delivery date by Sagittarius season, beginning of December of 2023. And so I'll continue to be updating you with that as we move forward. Also, if you'd like to support the show, you could rate and review. You could leave some comments in love. And we did get a really cool comment this past week. On the last episode we had was the Sagittarius full moon with the musician Lindsay Mills, which I love having musicians on the show. And this is one of the comments. This is from Perry Pierce. Perry writes, "I've been a fan for a long time, but this might have been my favorite episode. The musical aspect was so welcome and so enjoyable. Mad love to you and Lindsay," with a red heart emoji that is lit with flames. Yeah. So I love that. Was maybe one of my all-time favorite episodes too. So if you haven't listened to it yet, it was the Sagittarius full moon episode that was 2 weeks ago with Lindsay Mills. The Message is Mutable is the title of the episode, and we listened to 4 of Lindsay's songs. So yeah, all of these past episodes are available for your listening pleasure as well. But for now, let's transition into our conversation with Holly Ramey. So here is a little bio introduction of Holly. Holly has spent most of her life exploring spiritual practices, from Zen Buddhism at 18 years old to a college class in Eastern psychology to many trips to India. Holly has always been a seeker. I feel her Sagittarius moon so strongly. In her late 20s, Holly went on a path of deep healing in an effort to heal the wounds of her past. She studied yoga at Laughing Lotus in New York City, advanced yoga training and specialized training in restorative and therapeutics at Yoga Works, New York. She became a Reiki master under the tutelage of Deborah Hannekamp, Mama Medicine, and went on deep tarot explorations with Jeff Hinshaw of Cosmic Cousins and Bakara Whitner of Everyday Magic. And she continues to study both on her own and with amazing teachers. She shares everything she learns with the hopes that it will help you in the same way it did her. Her work is born from her own experience and continues to change and grow as she does. Holly continues to study the healing arts, most recently astrology and sound healing. She believes in magic. Love guides her and shows her the way, and she walks the spiral path of healing humbly with you. So at this time, let's transition into this conversation with Holly now. Okay, so today on the podcast, it's my honor to be gathering with a friend of mine. We go back to the Brooklyn days. Holly Ramey is here with us on the podcast. Welcome to Cosmic Cousins.
Thank you.
Excited to have you, excited to connect in with you. There's a lot of different topics for us to talk about today, which feels very Gemini, actually. It's interesting because you are not a Gemini, and I typically will have people on the podcast that are connecting us to the energy of the particular lunation. And we had checked in about 6 months ago about having you on the podcast for the Sagittarius full moon. And then as it was approaching, I was like, I want to drop in with you for Gemini. So I want to connect in today about why that might be. But let's share your big three first. So what's your sun, moon, rising?
I have sun in Aries, stellium in Aries, and then moon in Sagittarius and rising in Libra, where there's also a stellium. So
yeah. So this is interesting because it's fire and air. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's something about this combo. Maybe it's the Libra rising that's like, well, maybe we'll talk about Gemini and balance it out. And I think that you are someone that I have just observed in our community as someone who is like, you've been consistently showing up as a teacher and someone that offers mystical practices for over a decade. And like, you're very consistent in that. And I really honor and admire that, just because that's also something that I've done too. And so it's a practice for you. It's like it feels like it's part of your life. It's not just something that you do, but it's who you are. And I think from my observations of your offerings, I really see you as a Sagittarius who has learned to evolve through Gemini. I really connect to your Sag moon. And I'm wondering if some of that is because you're a life path too. And the high priestess really amplifies the moon in someone's chart. So let's check in and see, what does it feel like for you to be invited on Cosmic Cousins in honor of the Gemini New Moon? What does this mutable air sign mean to you, and how have you evolved through this energy as a Sag moon?
Well, yeah, that's really interesting because my Sag moon is in the house of Gemini, and that is the way my whole chart is laid out. And so the first thing I thought about was the polarity of Gemini being the twins, and how that is present in my chart so fundamentally because I have Libra in the first house. And so with the whole layout of my chart, there is polarity, which sometimes can be confusing, right? When I'm looking at my Aries sun in the first house of independence, or my Aries sun of independence in the seventh house of relationship. And so whatever transits are coming up for me, they're kind of coming up in polarity always. So it feels really resonant. And this Gemini season particularly feels very powerful to me in the way that it's presenting. I think my moon in Sag in the third house has really been fundamental in my career and my work, because it's like bringing that spirituality and that expansion and that optimism to my local environment, to my friends, to my neighbors, to my community, and learning to connect and be in relationship with them in that way. And so much of my, I think, personal medicine comes through relationship and how I cultivate and honor that relationship.
So what I'm hearing from you is that your Sagittarian gifts really do manifest in a Gemini way, being in the Gemini house. And one way that I'm seeing that, when I was looking over your bio, you list off all of these life experiences that you've had that have been a spiritual journey, from, exploring Zen Buddhism, to taking classes in Eastern psychology, to taking many trips to India. You've been on this journey of self-discovery, which is very Sagittarian, and you live here in the country that you were born in, and you bring those teachings to your local and immediate community, Gemini, our third house. And so it's always fascinating to look at a Libra rising's chart, because what you're inviting us into is how a Libra rising chart always has that innate balance and opportunity to meditate on the polarities, which is also a very Gemini concept too, which is connection to polarities. So Gemini is an important sign to you. And I needed like some sort of point to help me communicate that. And just intuitively, by connecting to your big three, Aries Sun, Sag Moon, Gemini rising, or Libra rising, I was like, I think there's got to be the point of spirit in Gemini, which you do have. Have you connected in with this point? Are you familiar with the point of spirit?
No, that's so funny, because I just connected in with a new, but it was the part of fortune.
Yeah.
But this is different?
Yeah. So there's two parts. They're Arabic parts. And I like that you're coming into the part of fortune, which you have in Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the part of spirit, or the point of spirit, in Gemini. And they're actually very similar points in our chart. What they do is, and I think that the message that was coming through for me is something to just share with the Cosmic Cousins community on this Gemini new moon. Since Gemini can really be a sign about the integration of polarities, is to get to know where the point of spirit is in your chart, and the point of fortune. So essentially, there are 2 points in our chart that are mystical, that show the meeting of our sun, moon, and rising. So when you bring Aries Sun together with Sag Moon and Libra rising, you get Aquarius. There's a point on the lower half of your wheel, and then there's a point on the upper half of your wheel. And so it meets in Gemini at 10 degrees and Aquarius at 11 degrees. And I can feel Aries, Sag, Libra coming together in Gemini and Aquarius. It makes sense. Since you are fire and air, it puts double fire with air. It puts your points in air signs. So I see the point of spirit up here in the 9th house now, which spirit is like where spirit comes through. It's like how you integrate your sun, moon, rising. And so I'm thinking about your newsletters that you send out. Gemini is the writer and 9th house is teachings. So that's something that you do too. Do you want to share a little bit with us about your newsletters and your offerings that you have in the world?
Yeah, my newsletter, I have been sending out for many years. Like you said, I've been in this for almost 15 years now. But last year, I think it was around this time, it may have been Cancer or Leo season, but it was in the summer, around the solstice time, I think. I decided to switch it to a Substack. And it's called Long Strange Trip, because I'm a deadhead at heart. And it's about the many journeys we take and the many roads we take along the way. And it's personal stories. It is musings, it's tarot, astrology, whatever I'm feeling into at the moment.
I've noticed, particularly maybe over the last few years for you, that you've had maybe taken more of an interest in astrology. I think our relationship began with the tarot. You were part of the Brooklyn Fools tarot journey back in, I want to say, like 2015.
I think it was 2014, wasn't it?
2014. Yeah. Yeah. So we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of that. What did the Fool's Journey mean to you? How did that inform your practice as a teacher? And I'm interested about your relationship to tarot and how that's also evolved into astrology. So I just asked you two questions, but maybe
they go together. So I was in the middle of my Reiki master training as well. I wasn't at the Reiki master yet. I had done level 2. In level 2, they introduce symbols. And the Reiki symbols didn't resonate with me for a while, maybe over a year. But the symbols that I did find almost immediately after my level 2 initiation were the symbols of the tarot. I actually saw them shopping at a local store where I lived in Brooklyn, and it was on Bakara's business card. Bakara, your partner in teaching that year. And something just, you have like an immediate reaction to something and you're just like, oh, I need to know this. So I picked up the business card, called Bakara, got a reading. And then within a few months, she introduced the Brooklyn Fools. So that journey was just so special to me in that, it was a long journey. It was 6 months. It was such a tangible, exploration of something so intangible. And I really loved the way that we just dove in and really embodied the archetypes so deeply. It was just really moving, and just the community around it. It just felt so nourishing at that time. And that time in my life was really expansive with spiritual wisdom. I just felt so steeped in finding something. It was like I had found something I was looking for, but I didn't know I was looking for it. So it had a really profound effect on my personal life, on my spiritual world. I felt like it was something that, I had been doing yoga deeply since 2007, 2008, became a yoga teacher. And I was working as a full-time yoga teacher at that time. And I wanted to expand my practice. And I had been through a lot. In 2011, my brother died. I had been through a lot. I was really on a healing journey. And, but the yoga was very love and light, it was very transcending the body and finding enlightenment. And I really loved the tarot because it showed me darkness. It showed me the things that I had experienced over those earlier years. Sorry, it's a little emotional for me. It showed me something I wasn't seeing in my other practices so much.
So what I'm hearing from you is that the tarot really offered you vocabulary around the darker themes in your life, and that yoga introduced you to perhaps the light, but there you were looking for more integration, which is, I'm also thinking about the polarity of Gemini right here. This is something for all of us to be connecting in with, is how we hold duality. And I was actually connecting with it this week because this is a personal share, but you're getting really personal. So I feel comfortable and safe to do that. But the therapist that I've been working with for the last 6 months, we both mutually decided to part ways this week, which is the first time I've ever experienced a breakup with a therapist. And I have felt I've been meditating on it through the lens of Gemini, and I felt these two very polar dialogues in my mind that were being created. And one was I'll call it the dark twin, was like, it's like the anarchist that's like, fuck therapy anyway. It's part of the system and there's all these rules. And every time I show up to it, I feel like I have to be professional and I can't really like just spill my guts out. Therapy. Like it was just like this like really like edgy anarchist twin inside of me. And then the other one is like the light twin that feels very like love and light. And it's like, oh, it's all divine order. This relationship has served its purpose. This is opening up space for me to get deeper into my meditation and yoga practice. I release this with love. I release this with light. But the interesting thing to me is as I was like tuning into these different parts of myself, I thought that they would not get along, but they actually really see each other and get each other. And, oh, these are actually two parts of myself that are completely integrated and they're completely opposite. And how do I hold space for both of them? And I think tarot and astrology give us permission to hold those complexities and dualities in our life. And I'm hearing that in a bit of what you're sharing. And it feels really interesting to reflect on it here on this Gemini new moon.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, I think even just breaking up with your therapist is powerful. I've done it too. It's like, okay, this isn't working. This relationship, has come to a close. This invitation is done. And
which there's a little bit of that in this new moon. So I wanted to check in with the new moon chart with you. In my practice, I've been really interested in connecting with the asteroids over the last few years and kind of sprinkling them in. I like to think of them as little cosmic cookie crumbs in our chart that just bring in a little bit more magic and flavor. And this new moon in particular, I'm going to share the screen with you and we can look along together. This new moon in particular has Juno, the asteroid of partnership, just 1 degree from the sun and the moon. Boom. Okay. We have Juno in Gemini. I'm going to break down just a few things that I feel are important about this new moon. And then I want to hear your thoughts on them too. Because you also release videos on your Instagram. Like you just released this nice video on Pluto and Capricorn, like Pluto going back into Capricorn, which that's also a theme of this new moon. I feel like the first new moon since that re-entry into Capricorn. So we have, it's the sun and the moon at the 26 degrees of Gemini. And then we have Juno, the asteroid of partnerships, at 27 degrees. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh, interesting. Like I just ended this relationship with a therapist. And, new moons can be endings and new beginnings. So it really actually tracks for me. When you were sharing about the loss of your brother, you mentioned 2011. Mm-hmm. And when I hear 2011, my mind goes to Neptune entering Pisces. 2011 was like a very spiritual year for me. It was also very it was a year that I had a lot of panic attacks and like kind of swirling like thoughts. And it was a very Neptune and Pisces time, but we're right here getting close to the end of Neptune and Pisces. Mm. And this new moon is actually square to Neptune and Pisces.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was looking at your chart. You have Neptune and Sagittarius right around this degree, actually, in your chart. So you're actually going through your Neptune square right now. So whenever we look at a new moon chart, we can look at how it relates to our own birth chart. So this new moon in particular is highlighting that for you. But there's something Piscean about this new moon because we have Saturn stationing retrograde on the new moon in Pisces, square to Mercury in Gemini, and then Neptune in Pisces square to this Gemini. And I want to bring in the galactic center because it's found at 27 degrees of Sag. So this new moon is also opposite the galactic center in Sag, square Neptune in Pisces. There's something so expansive and otherworldly about this new moon. So maybe that's also why I feel drawn to having you as a Sagittarius here. Or I keep calling you a Sag. I know you're an Aries, but I just feel your Sag moon so much that I just keep leaning into the Sag moon. Sorry, Aries. Aries is going to beat me up.
My Venus, Mars, and Sun are ready to fight.
So, okay. Yeah. What are you sensing about some of these aspects that you see? And also, we said Pluto just went back into Capricorn, and this is forming a quincunx to this new moon.
Yes. And Pluto is at 29 degrees. And I think I have Uranus at 29 degrees. Yeah.
You're in your Uranus opposition right now. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're coming up on your Uranus opposition.
Yeah. And so Uranus, it's hitting Uranus for me. So that feels like huge shifts happening. The Neptune square Neptune, these are the midlife crisis transits. I will not say that it was easy. This is a long transit. So it started for me back at I think, end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. So it didn't feel great to begin with. Like you were talking about 2011, feeling like a lot of anxiety and panic. It definitely brought that sense of like groundlessness, a little bit of anxiety for me. And I was moving at the time from Nashville back to the Hudson Valley in New York, back to New York. So there was like a lot of groundlessness, a lot of anxiety that I hadn't felt since probably my 20s, around that 2011 time as well. That was right around my Saturn return too. So there was just so much happening in my life at that time. So there was a lot to integrate and to face, and to a sense of like steadiness to regain within myself. A lot of trauma healing and looking at, Pluto and Capricorn in my fourth house. So really going back into my home and my sense of stability and security in my relationship to, mother and father, and like a lot of deep internal healing, and like how I resource my own sense of trust and stability. And that's been like a journey. It was pretty intense in like 2021. I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of the anxiety piece. And now with this upcoming new moon and just Gemini season in general, what that has done for me is opened up a line of creativity that I haven't felt that I had access to in the past. I think I needed to look at those Neptunian, I had to move through some of that. I had to find more of a solid ground in order to feel, I think, the safety to open up into more creative expression. And I don't know if that makes sense for this chart, Jeff, but it's just so funny because like the first day of Gemini season this year, I literally woke up and was just like, what would I do if I didn't do what I do now, like just for fun? And I was like, I would go back into like fashion and styling. And like within a week, I created a new Substack called First Love, because that was what I used to do. I was in the fashion industry and a stylist that was my previous career before I became a healer. And and I've just been like styling my friends and writing blog posts about fashion. So yeah.
I'm feeling your Libra rising coming now.
Yeah.
That connection to Venus, balancing the intellect with the material world. Styling friends feels very Libra to me. And I'm also reflecting on Juno being with the new moon. Juno, I also connect to fashion. It's very similar to Venus. Juno, I connect to florist, actually. The glyph for Juno looks like a little flower. So yes, some of us, the energy available to us, if the new moon is a time for us, maybe clear out space and also set new intentions, Juno is bringing in a relational component. It's bringing in a beauty, fashion. There is something collaborative with it being in the sign of Gemini too. And you're even talking about writing, which is also a Gemini theme. So we've had Juno and Gemini all of Gemini season, but there's something particular on this new moon where they're all meeting up with each other.
The flower is so powerful too. I don't know if you looked at my Instagram lately, but it's all flower.
So you're really feeling this influence of Juno, it sounds like, and maybe also Venus being in Leo has that expressive, bold creativity to it too. And as someone in your chart, you have Venus and Mars in the same sign in Aries, and right now Venus and Mars are both in Leo. So there's also a sort of as a similarity to your own birth chart, having Venus and Mars in the same sign, especially in a fire sign.
Yeah. And I think it's funny that you say that, because I never, Venus is my chart ruler, right? But I never felt really connected to Venusian energy. And maybe it is because my Venus is in Aries. So it's like I really connected to the fiery Aries. And only in the last year or so has that I've really leaned into that softer, more I want to say the sweetness of Venus.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting we're bringing Venus up, because in my practice, I love meditating on the traditional ruling planets, the modern ruling planets, but particularly I'm fond of the esoteric ruling planets. And so if we looked at your chart through the lens of esoteric astrology, your chart ruler wouldn't be Venus. This is Libra's traditional ruling planet, but the esoteric ruler for Libra is Uranus. It's much more revolutionary. It's very intriguing. And since we're gathering for the Gemini New Moon, perhaps we can talk about the esoteric ruler for Gemini. So traditionally, Mercury is the ruling planet for Gemini, but the esoteric ruler for Gemini is Venus.
Really? Wow. Oh, yes. Lover. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Lovers. So I wanted to check in with a lover's card with you today. And I want to just kind of share what the esoteric rulers feel like to me when I meditate on them. They feel like soul invitations for expansion. For Libra to meditate on its traditional ruler, Venus, almost feels like the shadow of Libra might emerge of codependency in relationships or too much focus on the material. But for Libra to meditate on Uranus feels like activating Libra's soul gifts. And I also feel like, yes, Libra's soul gifts can be Venusian, but that almost feels like an earlier stage of development. And I think for Gemini to meditate on Mercury can actually tweak a Gemini out. Gemini is so mercurial that if they're meditating on the fastest moving planet, it's da 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 da. I have so many ideas. But what happens if Gemini can learn to embody the Venusian principles of life? What happens when a Gemini lands in their body? What happens when a Gemini drops out of their head and into their heart? This allows Gemini to expand into soul invitation. So I really do encourage everyone to get to know your esoteric ruling planets. I think that they can be quite illuminating, and they really build a bridge to tarot, which makes sense because tarot is an occult esoteric practice. So Gemini, its esoteric ruler is Venus, and this new moon's with Juno, which has a Venusian feel. Venus is in Leo right now, and Gemini's card in the tarot is the Lovers. And I wanted to check in with you about that today. I know recently you wrote about the Lovers in your, was it your Substack?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lovers has been such a teacher to me, reflecting on what you were just talking about with codependency and growing up in a household of addiction and codependency, and recreating that in my life in so many ways with my partners and my friendships and my relationships to everyone from my therapist to money. and really playing with the devil and the lovers, right? And how I find that freedom within union. How I find that autonomy and sense of sovereignty and responsibility, and vulnerability to be seen. And I think, again, even in my work, like we spoke about earlier, just allowing myself to really to be vulnerable enough to be seen and heard, not just as the teacher who knows everything, because that's easy. That's an easy role to try to step into and be like, look what I know, look at how much I've studied, look at all these things that have helped me, and now I'm going to help you. But to really create space for balance, create space for the other person to come in and do 50% of the work instead of me trying to do it all and be the healer and be the caregiver and the pleaser, and not let my work be a trauma response of people pleasing or whatever it is. Like, it's been such a lesson that has, like, throughout my life, throughout my adult life.
Yeah, when you were talking about this, my mind for some reason went to your energy healing. And I'm curious how this might actually, like the caregiving, maybe it was when you said that, my mind went to just seeing you offering energy healing to someone, which is a nurturing practice. And there's a bit of distance that's created in some way, or maybe since it's more quiet, we're not having to use our words, our intellect, as much as we are maybe tuning in spiritually or psychically. It is utilizing different gifts. And so I'm witnessing you as a teacher and a writer, but also someone who shares gifts without using your words too.
And I recently started offering sound healing. And I think both my Reiki practice and the sound practice are very related to my Mercury in Pisces. It's really nice for me to be able to shut off the intellect and go just into something that feels so natural and innate. And I just let the energy flow. And even within that, Jeff, I have learned how to not do all of the work, but to really stand back. That's where that lesson with the lovers comes in so strongly, so that I can stand back and allow their energy to come and speak to me and give me permission on where to go and what to do. And it's like we're having this exchange without words.
Yeah. Mercury in Pisces. Yeah. And this is something that we said is particular to this new moon. We have Saturn in Pisces, square Mercury in Gemini, and Neptune in Pisces, square the sun and moon in Gemini.
There's BG.
There's little BG butter.
Yeah.
There's something about this new moon that feels like what you're talking about, though, that silence of not talking, which is not very Gemini, actually. Like, Gemini is very chatty. And I've even noticed when I've been waking up in the morning recently, my thoughts are just like so fast and rapid right now.
Oh,
yeah.
So I was up this morning at 4:30 a.m. And then my Gemini daughter came in at 5 to sleep with me. And this new moon falls on my daughter's 7th birthday. So 7 years ago, I became a mom. And I think this Gemini new moon is really special because 7 this feels like a really powerful birthday for my daughter. It's even making me emotional because, like, they say at 7, there's kind of like this energetic shift where the child doesn't need the mom's like aura as much anymore. And it also feels for me like, you know, your cells like completely shift every 7 years. Like you're a different person totally physically than you were before. And the birth of my daughter was such an initiation into healing work that you find Reiki, you find yoga, you find tarot, you think you have it all figured out and you're on this journey. And then when my daughter was born, I moved to Nashville, which was right on my Pluto line. I was faced with so much.
Major. This number 7 feels important, what you're bringing up. And you bringing in your daughter, who is a Gemini, feels important. Gemini is connected to children. It's connected to small animals. It's connected to early education. So the Gemini New Moon, if we're having ritual and like building an altar, it could be a time where you're honoring the kids in your life. I have felt that with Gemini, because Gemini is like also our nephews, our nieces, our nibblings, our cousins. So this could be a time for you just to reflect on these themes of your life. And so it's cool for you that your daughter actually is a Gemini, because it like really lines up there. And it's interesting for you as someone that is a Sagittarius moon to have a Gemini daughter too. And I think that that's part of how I've witnessed you evolving through Gemini, is just being a mother. Because even sometimes like when you're recording a video, like you'll hear like the kid in the background or something like that, and there's like a Gemini quality around you, even though you're delivering this like Sagittarian, like sage wisdom. And Gemini likes to like switch things up. This number 7 feels important for a few reasons. Well, one, we said Gemini is also, and Mercury is connected to our like small animals and children. My mind went to like dogs, like saying 7 years in 1 year. So my mind went there. So I'm also honoring Biji on this new moon. And 7 feels important because this is connecting us to Saturn. Saturn squares at 7 years. So your daughter is also going through her first Saturn square at this time. And then at 14, we have our Saturn opposition. 21, we have our next Saturn square. And then 28, we have our Saturn return. So it is like Saturn is the aging of the body. Saturn is the reality that we're all on this planet for X number of years, that we do have limited time on this plane of existence. And you're bringing in like the shifting and the aging of the body, but also on a spiritual and energetic level. You talked about like not being in the aura of the mom anymore, or something or the parent at age 7. And the reason Saturn feels important is, again, exactly on this new moon is the day Saturn stations retrograde, which feels particular. This new moon is on a Saturday, Saturn's day. And it's square to all this Pisces. There's something so Piscean right now where it's like Gemini might be bringing in a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, a lot of movement. And Saturn in Pisces says, can you slow down and meditate? That could be something Saturn in Pisces is saying. Yeah. Because we are in the unknown right now. Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in the final few degrees of Pisces. And Gemini likes to have things figured out in the here and now. And we do get the opportunity around this time of year to feel more Gemini, but there's a lot of Pisces influence happening right now. So all of that's to say, happy birthday to your daughter. Do you feel that she's taught you a lot of lessons? What kind of lessons, as like a lesson to learn more about Gemini too? Like what are some of the Gemini gifts that you see in your daughter?
My daughter is, her big 3 is Gemini Sun, Scorpio Moon, and Scorpio Rising. Mm-hmm. So even though she's a Gemini through and through, she also has that really deep Scorpionic energy to her. Mm-hmm. She is... In COVID, like when we were in lockdown in Nashville, she was nicknamed like the mayor of our block because she would just sit on the porch and wait for anyone to walk by and then interrogate them. Like, run out to the road and be like, where are you going? What are you doing? How you feeling? Like, she knows everybody's name, everything about them. Even if I was like cooking dinner and she was in the front room in her like diaper, she would run out like just naked into the street to speak to people. And even here in New York, she'll open her bedroom window and just yell out like, hey neighbor, to all the neighbors. They all know her. The entire construction crew that is working on a house across the street knows her. One of the construction workers like brought her a homemade gift. Her teacher, her first grade teacher, refers to her as best friend. Like, friends and neighbors are just so important to her.
Oh, Gemini.
So Gemini, she also gets very easily distracted and loves to do like many, many things at once. And sometimes I worry about her attention. But I remember that it's like her nature. She's extremely creative, but we come from her father and her brothers. I have two half stepsons, and they're her half brothers, which is funny that because they're 14 and 16, so there's another one going through their Saturn. And they're all artists, really talented illustrators. And right now she loves Barbie, and we're having a Barbie party with her cousins on Saturday, and it's going to be pink and fabulous.
Fun. I used to love Barbies when I was a kid, but I wasn't allowed to play with them. Definitely, I'm going to be thinking about Barbie on this new moon now. I have Chiron in Gemini, so it can bring Gemini energy can definitely bring up some of the child wounding. So yeah, everyone look to Gemini in your chart and just see what's being activated on this new moon. What are you being invited to drop into?
And watch the Barbie movie. It's coming out soon.
Oh, I've seen images of it. It looks so like neon pink and bleached. I'm very intrigued by it. It's
the Neptune that it's like Barbie in the movie realizes that like there's a Barbie world and a real world, and she has to go to the real world.
Neptune and Pisces square Gemini's sun and moon. That feels very much that. Is it just coming out this weekend?
It might be. It's coming out in June. She gets snapped out of fantasy and into reality, and she has to play with like everybody in the real world knows that she's Barbie, but she doesn't know that they know that she's Barbie. I mean, it's crazy. Wow. It's rated. It's not a kid's movie. It's an adult movie.
Yeah, but it's kind of like Gemini in that way that it's like an adult movie, but inner child healing too. Like there's something kind of nostalgic about it, which Gemini is a very nostalgic energy for me. I think we often talk about Cancer as being nostalgic, but I think of both of these two signs on that side of the wheel as having a tremendous amount of nostalgia. Like I think of, Gemini is going to connect you to your childhood best friend, and there's so much nostalgia about that relationship you might have to both home and family, Cancer, but also to like your neighborhood you grew up in. Yeah.
My cousin, who was my best friend growing up, is a Gemini. Her birthday is today. And she introduced me to Barbies, and she played Barbies with intensity until she was like 14. I mean, intensity.
Until her Saturn opposition. Playing with Barbies can like work out things that you're witnessing in the world around you. It's making me think of Mr. Rogers, who's like so Pisces, like Pisces is coming in again. But like Pisces and Gemini kind of have this like play in common with each other. But he had different puppets that would speak about what's going on in the world. And it was a way through the play and through the acting, it was a way to process, maybe some more traumatic things that are happening. So sometimes if you witness something at home that was abusive, you might act that out with the Barbies. It doesn't always have to be dark. It can be dark and light, but yeah, the intensity of playing with dolls can be also cathartic. So this kind of like playful quality of just like maybe even dropping into some play on this Gemini new moon. I think about the ability to hold both the darkness of things that are happening in the world and the light.
The play aspect really calls to me because that is something that I have felt a lot of inspiration of introducing play into my work instead of just as a thing I do with my child, or finding new ways to play. It used to be through like socializing and drinking and, a little bit of risk taking. And now realizing like, oh, I can play with my work, and coming back to the polarity, I can be really deep, and do this deep psychological work with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could also be really superficial and like care about fashion and styling. And like, I don't have to be one or the other. I'm allowed to be both. I don't have to let one or the other define who I am. These are things that Gemini is showing me this year, is giving me permission to be as many things that are complete opposites as I want to be.
If someone was interested in getting to know you more, or maybe even working with you, how might we find you, and what kind of offerings do you have right now?
Right now, my offerings are customizable. So if you want a straight up tarot session or Reiki session, we can always do that. But I also love to just combine the modalities and do longer, more intentional work where, we drop in together, we meditate, you share intentions with me, and we do a little bit of everything. We do a little energy, a little tarot, maybe some somatic work or breath work or sound, and really just letting the session unfold. And that can be done on my website, which you can link. It's just my name, hollydramey.com.
I imagine that when you're holding space, I imagine you do it in a very nurturing way. I'm just shouting out to your Cancer midheaven that we really check in with today. And I'm noticing this tattoo that you have on your arm. Gemini's connected to the arms and hands, so we can connect in with this part of our body. But my eye's just drawn to it, and I can't tell from where I am what it is. Would you be willing to share with us what your tattoo is?
Yeah, it's on my right inner arm. It's a Tibetan mantra. Om Gate, Gate Gate, Param Gate, Parasam Gate, Buddhi Svaha. Translates roughly into like gone, 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 into the beyond. It's a mantra that I chanted after the death of my brother. I lost him to suicide in 2011. And it really deeply helped me move through that period, connecting to my spiritual life and my spiritual world, and my faith during that time was just so impactful for me. And it's a heart chakra mantra. It's a heart healer. And recently I felt, and maybe I think it was around the time Jupiter moved into Taurus, because that's my 8th house of death and grief. I was having a lot of psychic dreams, and I get a lot of information through my dreams. Maybe you do too, as a Mercury in Pisces. The mantra was coming back to me, and things that I hadn't integrated from my brother's death were coming back to me. Feelings of guilt and just grief that I hadn't fully processed. And I was waking up in the night chanting this, just kind of without knowing. And that is actually what I would do. I would wake up at night during that really deep period of grief, and I would go to the mantra.
I'm feeling the Sagittarius polarity to this Gemini energy, and it's making me think of, again, how this new moon is in opposition to the galactic center, Sagittarius and the galactic center, that is connecting us to this kind of otherworldly cosmic portal of connection, which in my own practice, working with mantras and chanting, can be an access point into that, maybe dissolving into the oneness of all things. And it's very available to us on this new moon. And I love that I asked you about your tattoo. I don't always do that because the body can be so personal. So thank you for your willingness to share that and to share your experience with processing grief. And also Jupiter's back in Taurus now. So there's a return to that. It's like 12 years later. So I'm wondering, like, if there's this opportunity for us on this new moon to all be also, like, we're talking about the outward side of Gemini, of like maybe having inner child healing, maybe connecting to new ideas, new ways of communicating. But there also feels like this depth of connection to oneness and to all that there is, with the galactic center being activated here, with Neptune and Pisces being activated. And so some of us could be feeling not very external. Some of us might be feeling really deeply internal, like we want to go back and process maybe a lot of what's transpired over, like in this case, the last 12 years, this Jupiter return point to what you're talking about. So I'm wondering if being bathed in some sort of music, sound healing, or mantra could be helpful for us too. And maybe it's a bit of both. Maybe we're going out in the world, going, seeing a movie, and then also having time to come back within and to process. So I'm wondering if you would feel open to closing our time out together by sharing that chant with us, maybe even chanting it here with us.
Sure. It's been a while since
On the spot here.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh God.
But as an opportunity for us to feel into Neptune and Pisces and the galactic center, how it's interacting with this Gemini energy.
Yeah. And I totally agree with everything you said about the healing quality of mantra and just how it can, help us to transcend. And for me, it really feels like this heart-centered expression. If you've ever gone to kirtan or even just a concert, that feeling of connection, the connecting with the music, connecting with the people, connecting with the music, Okay. All right. So maybe at home you want to chant this with me. And if you do, and you're not driving, come to a comfortable position, close your eyes and take a deep breath. Maybe even placing a hand on the heart, connecting to the heart center. And I'm just going to speak the words first and tell you what they are. And then I'll chant 3 times. And if you want to join me in the sound, you can. But it's Om Gate, 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 Param Gate, Param Gate. Whoa, hold on, I'm messing up. Om Gate, 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 Param Gate, Buddhi Svaha. Okay. Om Gate, Gate, Gate. Param Gate Buddhi Svaha. Om Gate 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 Param Gate Buddhi Svaha. Om Gate 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 Param Gate Parasam Gate Buddhi Svaha. Thank you.
I could have listened to you chant that for like the next 20 minutes.
Put it on loop.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Holly, for carving out the space in your life to be with us here on this new moon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, as always, Cosmic Cousins, for tuning into the podcast. Without you, this show would not be possible, and it is an honor to be here with you in this way. let's close out our time together by bringing awareness back to our body and our breath. Gemini is connected to the arms, the hands, the shoulders, and the lungs. Our phrases for Gemini this new moon: I communicate, I integrate, I collaborate. I hear a little bird off in the distance chirping, so pay attention to the birds, the bees, the butterflies this time of year, particularly on this Gemini new moon, and maybe you will even gift yourself some time to sing or to communicate your truth out into the world. Our affirmations for this Gemini new moon will be nice to check in with as we close out our time. I communicate my thoughts and feelings with ease and clarity, breathing that into the body. As you exhale, I release any limiting beliefs and embrace my full potential. I am grateful for the connections and relationships in my life. Sending you big, big love on this Gemini new moon. I hope it brings some magic and insight and curiosity into your life. And I'll see you next time on the Capricorn full moon in 2 weeks as we move into Cancer season. Take sweet care, cousins, and remember, deep breaths.